Okay, moving on. 16B, Commission General Regulation 402, LCB file number R055-11, Bighorn sheep and Swan changes to NAC 502.345. Game Division Chief Larry Gilbertson and Wildlife Staff Specialist Mike Cox. The Commission will consider and may take action to adopt proposed changes to provisions pertaining to miscellaneous requirements related to bighorn sheep hunting, including elimination of mandatory indoctrination requirements, elimination of mandatory possession of certain optics while hunting bighorn sheep, plugging of the skull, horns, or harvested bighorn sheep, removing or altering the seal, plug or branded identification number once permanently attached, elimination of provision to notify the Department upon transfer of ownership of bighorn skull, and changes to Swan permit eligibility to allow youth and senior hunter access to permits consistent with state and federal waterfowl migratory license and stamp requirements. Okay, so we discussed this last time. We had a little bit of a issue with regard to the indoctrination class. I understand that we got something worked out.
Oh, well, good morning, Mr. Chairman, and for the record, Larry Gilbertson, Department of Wildlife. Yeah, we had some interesting discussions yesterday over this issue, and there were some suggestions that changing this from mandatory to voluntary would be a detriment to our bighorn program. And I guess as a 33-year biologist for the Department of Wildlife, I just would like to point out that when my biologists in this game division brings forward a recommendation, one thing you can be assured of is that our recommendations, whether they're CGRs, season recommendations, quotas, or any of the other recommendations that we might bring forward for like trapping and transplanting, definitely we consider the resource first. That's what my people do. They're the most dedicated group of people I've ever worked with. In preparation for this, Mike Cox, of course, called the other western states that have smaller bighorn populations than we do, and he wanted to find out if in those smaller populations if it was a major concern, and found out that there were no other states that had mandatory indoctrinations except for one state that I'm not sure you want to model yourself after. Is California is the only one that has mandatory that's left. It's kind of ironic, I guess, a little bit that a lot of the NRA magazines and other outdoor magazines lately have been citing that one of the big problems that sportsmen point out is cumbersome and complicated regulations, and that's their reason for not continuing with hunting in a lot of instances. And so it's kind of ironic that we're crossing out and simplifying a regulation, and apparently maybe we need to send the video to NRA and tell them to keep their nose out of it, because sportsmen actually like cumbersome and complicated regulations. But if we go down the road, if you decide today to make it, keep it mandatory, I guess if we do the two things we talked about and fix it so that we can address those situations where people have legitimate excuses. We went through all that yesterday, and there's definitely legitimate excuses for not being able to make it. And so if we can address that issue, and we have the flexibility to make those people show up and put them on a computer in the office, whatever it takes, and see the video and then issue them that certificate, that would be a big help. And while I thought about it, we have this provision in here about guides sitting in for people. And I guess what's interesting about that to me is that the very word mandatory suggests to me that this is really an important program, and we all feel it's really necessary and really important. And if it's that important, then why do we also, I don't know how this ever really got in the regulation when you think about it, how do we put in here that if you have enough money, you can pay somebody to take the class for you? You don't even have to be there. So thinking about that, if we do the changes we talk about in subsection 2, that gives us the flexibility that nobody has an excuse. There's no reason they can't somehow set up something with us that we can accommodate them and let them take this important class. So from that standpoint, in subsection 2, we would need to take out or his guide or sub-guide in that sentence, and then we could leave 4, 5, and 6 all crossed out and make them responsible. Because when you think about it, if a guide brings you out there and gets you to as close as he can, and he tells you, well, you're going to have to shoot about a foot above, and that bow will just drop right in there, and for some reason, the hunter shoots a little high, hits a rock, it ricochets, kills a ewe or something, the guy doesn't get the ticket. It's the person who pulls the trigger is ultimately responsible for what goes on in this hunt. So having somebody sit in for you just doesn't seem reasonable, really. So anyway, that was my suggestion on going forward with that.
Okay. Mike, did you have anything to add? Okay. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission. Any commissioners have a question or comment with regard to the indoctrination issue or any other issue on this regulation? Commissioner Drew.
I just had one question. I think Maureen had mentioned this yesterday in regards to the Swan portion of the changes. Did we need to consider adding, for example, on page 3, sub 2, where the new language reads, unless the person is under the age of 12, did we need to add a resident and under the age of 12? I know we talked about that just briefly yesterday.
For the record, Maureen Hellinger, Nevada Department of Wildlife. Yes, we do need to add language in Section 2, subsection 2, to have it read, unless the person is a resident and under the age of 12 years.
And again, under sub C?
That one is already taken care of because you don't have to have the stamp if you're under 12. But it didn't address the license requirement properly. So.
Any other commissioners with a question? I have one. Okay, we had a lot of discussion about the mandatory indoctrination class yesterday, and we talked about various ways that we were going to do it. And during a break yesterday, I understood that the fraternity that does Bighorn and Mr. Bentley had somehow worked out something. And so I guess what I'm asking is what was the, where did we end up on that as a way to resolve the problem? Because we talked about taking a class on the internet or some other way to do it, or are we just going to basically give complete discretion to the department to figure out a way to get it done?
Yeah, that would really work best. Like Mike Cox pointed out, in the past, for political reasons, he had to give a single person indoctrination. And really, when people have legitimate excuses, we're going to accommodate them. And if one of us doesn't, they'll appeal to the director or they'll appeal to the governor. I mean, we deal with all that kind of things, And so I think as long as we just make that simple change that we talked about, it gives us the discretion to provide that opportunity, make them come. We'll just contact them and see what works. I mean, we're usually pretty accommodating and let them come the day before the season even and sit down at the office. We can have it on a computer, or we can put it on a CD, and they can just sit there, and we can even have administrative staff watch them sit there. I mean, the indoctrination people show up sometimes midway through because they got a flat tire on the way there, and we don't say, okay, you're not getting your tag because you're late. And we have people who show up halfway through sometimes. So we'll accommodate them, and I think that would work the best.
Okay.
Larry, what was that language? Why don't you review the language you proposed?
So the actual language?
The actual language.
Well, in subsection 2, all we would need to do is take out or his guide or sub-guide in the second and start of the third sentence. When you get down to the word attend, change it to complete, also in the third sentence. And then the last sentence was the tag would be issued upon. Keep that crossed out and say a certificate of completion will be issued and must be carried upon the person while hunting bighorn sheep. And we'll do that. We'll issue those. And then the other, we can leave, if you don't want the guide part, we can just leave 4, 5, and 6 all crossed out. 6 was the scope thing. And we need to put in, under the Swans, subsection 2A, where it says, unless the person is, we need to insert in there a resident and under the age of 12.
Mr. Chairman, one of the major thing for us is that when Don Septon's group does the draw, we want those tags to go out to the individual so that we don't carry them around. They don't go to Maureen place. They don't go to, so that we eliminate any possibility of a hiccup there. And it would be the hunter's responsibility to have that card on them when they're, and if we know, frankly, that they didn't take we will make a contact before the season, but that would be great thing. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, any other commission questions? Any specific questions with regard to the guide portion, taking the guide's ability to step in and be the agent for their client and taking this course? I guess that's the only one that we didn't really discuss at length yesterday. Commissioner Howell?
Director Mayer, did I hear you say it was going to, the certificate's going to be an actual card, a wallet-sized card?
It'd be like a hunter safety card is what we're talking about.
Because that'd be way better than folding up.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, I'll see no comment. I'll go ahead and take this out to the public for public comment. Anybody in the public have a question or an issue with this? Clint? Oh, did you want to say something?
I just want to point out that we need to leave 3 in because it tells you when, upon drawing conducted in 1990 or later, if you've already gone, and we leave that in so that they've already accomplished their requirement.
Okay.
For the record, Clint Bentley, I took up all of your time yesterday, but I do want to commend the department for working with us, and I would totally support the change in the language to require everyone to take the class, not and eliminate the sub-guide and guide.
Okay, good. Mr. Harris.
Paul Harris, fraternity of the Desert Bighorn, and I echo what Clint said. We appreciate the department working with us, and if everybody takes the course, that's great. They get issued a card that eliminates the department's trying to control tags. The tags go out. That's great. It's just like a duck stamp. You hunt with a duck stamp or a hunter safety card. You're issued a number on there, and then someone loses their card, they can go back into the department and they can look them up and they charge them a $5 $10 fee, whatever. They get their card back, and that would work well. And other than that, no, I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Clint, come on back up.
I'm sorry, I did have one other item on that I'd like to address. If they were going to take the class by the computer coming in later, if it's at all possible, I'd like to see an administrative fee added to that so that there was something to create a reason to take the real class and not just wait and try and take a computer class.
Okay. I guess the question I'd have about a fee, do we have the authority to add an administrative fee like that without taking that out and noticing it up on the in the regulation, or is that something we'd have to address next round?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. Our lawyer is standing over there. I don't think we have the authority, unless it's an NAC, to charge a fee. So we would have to come back. That's a good suggestion. We can come back with a regulatory package to plug that in.
Okay. Good suggestion, but I had a feeling we wouldn't be able to do that. Come on up, Gil.
Gil Yannick, Carson Advisory Board. The last comment that was made about removing the ability for a guide and a sub-guide to take the class for its client, we have some people who come in to hunt that, travel great distances. Now, I know there's the option to make arrangements with the department for possibly coming in early just before the hunt season to take this class. That may not go easily. I'm just trying to be sensitive to some of the people that we've talked to about this who do travel great distances and have made arrangements with their guides since they're paying some big fees, that perhaps we should really reconsider that, taking that out.
Okay, thanks. Good point. Jason.
For the record, Jason Peterson. Cost-wise, I actually got on the phone last night when I went home. I pulled 13 Nevada residents, 9 non-residents, and said, if you drew a sheep tag in Nevada and the class was not mandatory, would you go to a voluntary course, or would you simply just go in, sit down in the office, take the class, and be done with it? 2 residents said, I'd go to the class. 3 non-residents. Take a look and think about the aspect of the amount of additional work that's going to take place inside that NDOW office when 75% of the people are going to be coming to your office. Additionally, the cost that you're going to have to issue these cards, stuff like that. I mean, everybody's talking about budgeting nowadays and how we don't have money for this and money for this. Again, I kind of go back to my comment yesterday. You know when you apply that this was something that was mandatory. If you can't make it, then why? As far as the legality of the administration fee added onto it, I don't see why there wouldn't be a way to work it where you would charge a fee, because the department is incurring additional costs to bring them in and do this. So, thank you.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the Commission. Commissioner Rain.
Thank you. Not to be a fan of what the department has proposed, but I am quite a fan of what the department has proposed. You know, we've talked, I know, at many other meetings about cumbersome and complicated regulations. This is a cumbersome and complicated regulation, and I think that they did a very smart thing in striking the entire section. I mean, yeah, sure, the course is good, but who loses at the end of the day? If you don't take the course, the guy who doesn't take the course loses. Does the department lose? Do the rest of the sportsmen lose? No. Heck, if I take the course and you don't, and I get some good, call it insider information from biologists, then that gives maybe me a better quality of hunt. And I'm glad you didn't show up, because, you know, you're not in a good spot. I mean, who really loses at the end of the day? Is it the people in general? I mean, you get a few people wandering around out in the wilderness that didn't take the class and don't know that that mountain range over there really doesn't have any sheep and all the sheep are over there. Who loses? I mean, just striking it, it's too complicated to start messing with it. Yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff here. The optics, that doesn't make any sense. They're absolutely right. The whole section is obsolete, has been for decades. The examples given by staff there, Larry Marine, and, you know, I had one. I'm taking a grandfather out of basically, I mean, he was in chemotherapy. You know, we drag him out of the hospital down to take the class. He was there. He couldn't hear it anyway. He couldn't hear with a loudspeaker in his ear. Nonetheless, you drag him down there. We're taking the class. We're going sheep hunting. They take me out because I want to go sheep hunt. Get me out of this place. No problem. So, you know, there's a million other examples of that. I mean, I imagine they've seen things that are just unbelievable. So, but just strike it. I mean, why create another bureaucracy for what? For what? Because some people aren't going to want to take a class that's a good, really, really good idea? Okay. So they don't take it. Who loses? They lose. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioners comment? I have. Okay. Go ahead, Vice Chairman Rob.
I was on the Bighorn Sheep Management Planning team with prior Commissioner Bentley and a bunch of other very avid sheep people, and we were very adamant that we needed to leave indoctrination in there. I believe in the indoctrination process enough that I've probably been no less than 10 times myself. Drew a tag in '95, got on NBU board. We'd go give sodas and everything. I think it has a tremendous impact on the people that hunt. I think it's a quality project, quality program. But I'm arguing with myself, and I know Clint and Larry Johnson are going to look at me and go, what are you saying, Jack? But there's some people that it could be a burden on. I look at somebody maybe out of New York City, draws a tag, doesn't have enough money to hire a guide. There's reasons that people miss, and I've talked to Jim Jeffers, a bunch of people about this, and I'm usually not short on opinions right now, but I have to listen to more conversation before I make up my mind. I'm leaning more towards not making it mandatory, and I know that's probably a shock to some people, but listen to what Scott said. The person who loses is the hunter, and I think that sheep people draw a sheep tag, realize this is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. I appreciate the poll that was taken, but I think when people draw a sheep tag, they know how important it is, and I think we'll still get a tremendous number of people showing up to indoctrination. But the absolute mandatory, I don't know. Given the ability to go to class, I agree that we'll have a line of people trying to get to a computer the day before the season. Like I said, I'm arguing with myself, but if I'm leaning to the not mandatory.
Any other commissioners? Okay, I guess my after listening to everything, I think Gil's comment is very good, and the guy who draws the tag from another state, a non-resident, is a big issue, I guess after listening to everything, I'm leaning toward supporting having mandatory indoctrination, but maybe leaving the ability of the guides to stand in for their client makes sense to me. And if the purpose of indoctrination is to make sure that the hunter understands the issues surrounding sheep and hunting in Nevada, a lot of that goes away when he's got a guide right next to him that is obviously very, very experienced, and he's going to get an indoctrination while he's hunting probably hunters that hunt by themselves are not going to get. And so maybe we strike a better balance by having it mandatory, because to be quite honest, I think that if we're really not changing much other than trying to get a mechanism in place to deal with these guys that just absolutely can't make the indoctrination, and making sure we don't take away their tags. So I guess that's the way I'm seeing it. So anyway, Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After hearing Commissioner Robb and Commissioner Rain, I kind of feel the same way. I think the only issue I have is I want to know that they're going to continue to offer the indoctrination course, because I know that myself, if I do that tag, even if it wasn't required, if that course was offered, I would go for the same reasons that Commissioner Rain stated. That, I mean, anything that helps you do a better job and be a better hunter, I think, is a great opportunity. But at the same time, if we require it, and if someone's 3,000 miles away in a different state and can't make it, I think that's where we're going to end up. The same thing, we're going to have a line of people the day before the season trying to get their little card so they can go hunting. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Drew.
Well, since everyone else has weighed in, I favor keeping the course and just making it more flexible for the department to implement. That's where I stand right now. As far as the guides, I think if someone's willing to spend the money to hire the expertise of a guide, then maybe we should leave that in there at this time. But I'm favorable to at least making it a little more flexible for the department to implement, so it's more workable for their folks.
Okay. Any further? Okay, seeing none, then I guess I'll be looking for a motion. And we're all over the place. It's wonderful having a 9-member commission and having having some. Commissioner Howe, did you have a comment?
I just wanted to make one more point about the opportunity for like a non-resident, especially, to hire a guide, which a non-resident would be more apt to hire a guide, I would think. And if the guide was already certified with the course, I don't see a problem with that. And but I also wonder if somebody that's already been certified, like a companion, a friend, a brother, an uncle, or whatever, that's already been certified, that's hunting with a guy that probably didn't have the chance to take the course, if that wouldn't be acceptable also.
Well, I guess
rather than do away with the course completely, at least you got somebody on the hunt that's taken the course.
Yeah, I guess just to respond to that is that I think we start getting into an area that we start losing control of it, because rarely are you going to have a friend, even a family member, that if you're going to be getting a sheep tag and you're going to, you'll spend your 2 or 3 weeks vacation hunting, you may not get that commitment out of your family member. And so I don't know. I don't know. I think I'd rather keep it limited to just the guides as being the only exception. That would be my response. Commissioner Robb?
One thing I look at, and being an average guy, I look at my ability to hunt in other states. And that's what I'm looking at, is people's ability to come into our state and hunt. And if I could draw a tag in Alaska and go Dall sheep hunting and take an I look back and forth about how much guides cost, how much everything costs. I'm looking at the average guy trying to get here and go sheep hunting, because I'm an average guy, and I just look at my opportunity. And when Mike called about this change, my first reaction was, there's no way that's going to happen. And I've talked to quite a few people, and like I said, I'm leaning the other way. So I'm thinking of the average guy. Sheep hunting is seen as a rich man's sport, and I like an average guy being able to do it.
Commissioner Rain.
I'll take a stab at a motion. I'd see there's 2 possible motions, because trying to change this regulation as it is and trying to get into that minutia, that seems to be a miresome process. So therefore, I would see 2 motions, and I'll take a stab at one, that is to accept all of the department's regulations, with the only change being in subsection 2. Section 2, subsection 2, as Maureen stated, unless a person is inserting a resident and, then finish, so it reads, unless a person is a resident and under the age of 12 years, and accepting all of the department recommendations.
Second.
Okay, now, just want to get a clarification on that. The changes that we're talking about are the original changes that were proposed by the department that we looked at yesterday, and rather than, we didn't get a copy of any changes. So, okay, so I'm correct on that?
Yeah, correct. And for discussion of that, I would say our other option, if this one happens to not fly, then basically all the stuff in most of the stuff in red, well, I don't know. I guess you start adding that back in, but man, that just seems to be mired in.
Okay.
Basically, need another subcommittee.
Okay. So, does everybody understand the motion as presented? Any further discussion from the commission on this? Everybody understand? Okay. Then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Then, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay. So let's have a roll call. All of the ayes, raise your hand. So how many was that? Okay, and so the opposition was okay. Motion passes 5-4. We're done.